Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back with Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! He makes go! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
In the air, left field! The Tigers march to the World Series!
Motor City, Detroit Sports Podcast.com presents to you the Motor City Sports Rant. As you can hear, the guys aren't here, and joining me, a good friend of the podcast, Vito Jerome. What's going on, buddy? Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I put the call out and said, hey, the guys are away. They're on assignment, doing things for the station, doing things for work. And who else would I want to join me to talk sports, to talk Detroit Tigers? Then, friend of the podcast, you had us on your Churko and Company radio station. And thank you for coming in on short notice and chatting it up with us. Thank you.
No problem. Let's do it.
Yeah. Now, since you graduated from U of D. You've become now a writer in a paper that I read. Congratulations, man.
Very glad that you read the Free Press. And I'm a freelancer right now, I'll tell you that. Prep sports contributor right now to the Free Press. Work about twice a week inside the office. Then I write a bi-weekly sports media / profile piece of athletes, former athletes, media members, personalities, celebrities, more of athletes, obviously, because it's sports-related pieces, and sports media personalities, like Lenny Melnick in my first one, fantasy sports radio show host, a legendary pioneer for fantasy baseball, known as the godfather of fantasy baseball and fantasy sports, and especially the baseball end of the spectrum. And then the most recent one that came out actually today, published in the print edition of the Free Press, a profile piece and Q&A on Peter Vanderkay, former U.S. Olympian swimmer, Royal Oak native, and also a guy that now works at Signature Associates, a commercial real estate firm all throughout Michigan and also in northern Ohio. So he's done a lot of good stuff, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and now he's contributing to the business world as a real estate person at Signature Associates in Southfield, Michigan.
Yeah, no, Vito, that's awesome. You can follow Vito at Vito Jerome on Twitter. You definitely will find his tweets and his posts to his articles on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. And it's really great to hear that, someone that, has been supportive to the podcast has now taken the next step in his career. So what have you been, just real fast, what kind of things are you interested in writing about, and what does the future hold for our up-and-coming freelance writer?
I hope sports media stuff and baseball stuff, focusing on the Tigers specifically, maybe being a beat writer / beat reporter for the Tigres or Los Tigres, in the future, maybe for the Free Press or the News or somebody locally here in the Metro Detroit area. Because I love my baseball and love my Tigers, and I know we're going to be talking about that today, too, here on the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Oh my gosh, you're a glutton for punishment. You want to cover these Detroit Tigers over the course of 162 games, the up and down roller coaster, huh? Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, it'll be extreme, a long journey, and it's a marathon season. It's never short, never quick, but it's a good time, I think, for a lot of people, unless you're maybe older and you've done it for a few years and it gets old. And if you have the family, right? If you have a few kids, I know you do, 2 beautiful daughters there, and I really appreciate you having me come in and talk about the Tigers and everything. But you're right, it would be a long journey, a long, strenuous season, really, to go through 162 games. But I love baseball, I love talking it, and that's why I'm on here today.
That's awesome. So dream job would be beat writer for the Detroit Tigers, Free Press, or maybe nationally.
Maybe nationally, maybe for MajorLeagueBaseball.com, for MLB Network, for one of those 2 entities. So Major League Baseball, anything with it, really, I love and I dig. So I would love to do anything baseball related, to be honest with you.
Well, let's just talk about our Tigers. Unfortunately, right now, the Tigers are mired in a significant offensive slump. And every option, everything that Brad Ausmus is trying to do seems to be backfiring. I mean, when runners are getting in scoring position, he tries to, get them over to steal, and they're getting thrown out when you have Kinsler and Cabrera up next. The runs seem like a premium at this point in time, and the Tigers get a quality start in the second game of the series versus the Angels, and they don't give Anibal Sanchez any runs. He gave up a couple runs, gave up a home run to Pujols, but all in all, compared to his last few starts, not bad at all. It was something that, you could tell, and Adam and I talked about it on our podcast. You could tell it was probably something mechanics, keeping the ball down in the zone, a little bit of confidence, and he came back. 2 runs that you don't get, and you get shut out. Over 20 games where they've scored 2 runs or less. With this offense, it's really unacceptable. It's quite inexcusable for collectively, as a unit, this Tiger team struggling this much. What have you been seeing?
Well, you think it's really good, the lineup, huh? 1 through 9. It's a deep lineup, 1 through 9. But I don't think it is as deep as people perceive, maybe. Right now, you have Castellanos, JD Martinez, Cespedes. All these guys are guys that can hit for power but strike out way too often. No plate discipline, no contact ability. For me, they're power or nothing guys. And when you have those guys, even in the middle of the order where you need them, towards the bottom too, but at the same time, they're not producing. So I don't care if they are power guys that can hit in the middle of the order and produce RBIs, be those big-time run producers. If you're not hitting for contact, you're not getting on base, and that means you're probably not going to drive in as many runs either at the same time that you could in opportune situations with runners in scoring position. And the best example A from last night against the Halos, Castellanos, right? With a guy on, third or second, something like that, guy in scoring position, or 2 guys in scoring position. And Davis was thrown out that inning, I think, going to third as well, trying to swipe another bag after already stealing second base. That wasn't necessary. So he ruined the inning, and that inning went to waste when you had guys in scoring position. And Castellanos is not getting it done right now, but it's not just him, like I said. It's JD Martinez, Cespedes, Kinsler not hitting for power. So we don't have a ton of run producers, and V-Mart being out right now doesn't help the issue either.
The last couple games versus the Angels, I've stayed up and watched. Tedious. I feel like now I've become a glutton for punishment, staying up past 12:30 most games when they're playing on the West Coast.
It's a late night, yeah.
Yeah, it's late
night. It's tough to stay up for those games when they're not scoring runs, especially.
Exactly, and I'm like, wow, you got the NHL playoffs, you got Michigan softball, you got so many other things, and I'm sitting there going, why are my Tigers playing this way? And I watched the pre- and post-game show, and they definitely break down what's been going on. And one factor, and I want to get to your point regarding collectively as a whole of this team. One point that they brought up Friday night was Ian Kinsler's struggles. In the victories that the Tigers have had, Ian Kinsler has been a significant contributor. RBIs, key hits, getting on base, and now with Kinsler slumping, it's really significantly added to the woes. I mean, Adam and I have talked about JD Martinez's inconsistency, Nick Castellanos, and now you add Ian Kinsler to the list of being inconsistent. They flashed a stat that said in the losses, he's batted under 200. He's not getting on base. The RBIs have gone way down. And then you would not expect him to bumble a simple little play, and he did. On Friday's game, he had an error that cost them a run. In the grand scheme of things, it's just one run. But when you're struggling...
When you're not scoring runs, right?
Every run
is a premium. It really is.
Every run is a premium. It stinks because they loaded the bases in the 8th, and it just didn't happen. And you almost knew that Houston Street was going to come in and just blow away Cespedes because, he hasn't been clutch yet this season. And it's just unbelievable how now we keep adding players to the list of guys who are not contributing. It's unbelievable. Collectively, this offense should do better. And to your point, this team, based on past results, has a track record of guys that hit around 280 up to above 300. So collectively, you would not think that Ian Kinsler, JD Martinez, Castellanos, Cespedes would be mired in a slump where they can't get a key hit. They can't put 2 and 3 hits together now in the last week. It's really quite amazing. It's baffling, in my opinion.
But remember, JD Martinez only had the great season last year. Came out of nowhere, hit for average, hit for power. I don't think he's a guy that can hit for power and for average going forward, okay? I don't think he's that good of a two-way hitter. And then Cespedes couldn't even get on base last year. He was horrible with both the Oakland A's and then the Red Sox after they traded for him. Couldn't get on base. His on-base percentage was, 302, something like that. Very dismal. And this year it's probably around that as well. And his home runs have been solo home run shots. I mean, if you're hitting solo shots and that's it with nothing else with guys in scoring position, you're not doing your job as a middle of the order bat. So I'm concerned about him as well, getting it done with runners in scoring position, because he's not driving the guys in, and nobody really is right now outside of obviously Cabrera. I mean, you got Cabrera, but you have V-Mart on the DL. JD's and Castellanos are kind of hitting like they are injured or hampered by something. And then on top of that, they're not the best fielders. So you don't have the best fielders either with those two guys, and they're not hitting. So really, what are their wars right now? Their win above replacement numbers. They're not very good collectively, the two of them and individually. So I'm concerned about them going forward on both ends of the spectrum, both on defense and on offense.
Look at you breaking out the WAR stat.
Yeah, I like using those stats, the advanced statistics here and there.
Okay, which stats are you peeking in on? WAR, on-base percentage? What kind of stats are you checking in on that pique your interest?
I like looking at the OBP, honestly. Doc. And honestly, for me, when I looked at Cespedes, like I said, from last year, looking at his OBP of barely above 300, it's been below it. I think he's fluctuated between that above and lower than 300 this year so far, too. That's not good enough for me to say that he's a stud ball player who you can rely on and who can be at least a borderline all-star year in and year out going forward. So extending him past this season, I'm not sure about the Tigers doing that. He's a phenom with great intangibles, right? Assets. Could be a 4-5 tool player. But realistically, is he? Great arm, cannon of an arm. Power. He has that power stroke here and there. But consistently, like you said, very inconsistent as a whole, this lineup 1 through 9, outside of Cabby, who is miraculous. I mean, he's the greatest hitter in the game. Pure slugger. Can do it to all fields and hit for power and hit for average. But everybody else, Doc, I mean, you tell me. Do you think anybody else you can expect to do both very well on a consistent basis? No, I don't know who you can really count on for that. And Ian Kinsler, same thing. And now he's not even hitting for average, not even getting on base. And he has to, hitting in that number 2 hole. If he's not getting on base, and if Davis isn't, I mean, you got Ghost, who has been so far, but can you really rely on him going forward to hit for average and to get on base at a high clip? I don't think so, Doc. That's my concern for the Tigers going forward.
Yeah, and Craig Monroe, great Fox Sports Detroit analyst.
I love him. I always see him in Royal Oak, by the way. He's at O'Toole's, at all these bars, Blackfin, everywhere.
Oh.
Not that I go out all the time, but I do see him when he's out, it seems like.
Oh, Vito Jerome, name dropping on the podcast. Look at you taking advantage. We're going to have you back, man. It's all good, man. We're going to have you back name dropping. And I'm going to bring up later in the podcast what we call a tease. You took a photo with someone who in this room is a heated enemy, and we'll talk about that later in the podcast.
I bet I know who you're talking about, too, a little bit. So,
all right. The Tigers, something needs to take place with this offense, and Craig Monroe has tried game after game to break it down. You can see his frustration, like, what is going on? Everyone's like, geez, oh, Pete's. Brad Ausmus has tried to shift the lineup. He's tried everything he could possible to try to spark the offense. A significant point that has been brought up by a lot of people is, why on earth is Hernan Perez consistently joining this lineup? He's been quite unremarkable, and we can't send him down. They won't try to put him back in the minors because I don't know if they're scared. There's a team out there that wants a guy that only has 2 or 3 hits this year. To add insult to injury, scrolling through Twitter after the game, a couple reporters in town tweet out, Max Scherzer has 5 hits this season to Hernan Perez's 2.
It's embarrassing.
Max Scherzer has more hits than a player that you've thrown out there for the last 4 or 5 games to be in the lineup. Are you kidding me? What is Brad Ausmus waiting for to pull him? Let's just start. Simple solution to the offensive woes. Hernan Perez leaving the lineup probably improves the offense 4%. And then I think right now what the Tigers need to do is get back to old-fashioned baseball. String together a couple hits. String together, not go for home runs, not swing for the fences. Single, double, couple hits back-to-back. And I think they're due. And I'm almost certain when this comes out by Saturday or Sunday, they're going to have a breakout game. I mean, they cannot continue this awful streak in Anaheim that much longer. A team, when you look at it on face value, this team has a potent offense. And when they've scored 8 to 10 runs. So what we're looking for is consistency, not these up and down swings where when you're on, you get 10 runs, and when you're off, you only get 2. You need to have that consistent balance of, hey, as a unit, get a couple runs a game, and then match that with good pitching.
But honestly, I think the Tigers overachieved to start the season, and they're overrated, like I said, 1 through 9. In the middle of that order with Cespedes, Castellanos, JD. They can't get on base at a high enough clip consistently. That's why I don't think they're reliable going forward. You like them for their power, great power strokes, but that's inconsistent as well, and you have to get on base to score runs consistently on a game-to-game basis throughout the course of a long 162 regular season. That's going to be tough for the Tigers, I think, to get out of these bats in the middle of that order outside of Cabby. And even V-Mart when he gets back now. Okay, he can hit the one way, right? He's shown that ability, but hitting both ways as a switch hitter at a premium rate like he has in the past as an all-star DH, I don't see him doing that either at his advanced age. And I think he might be damaged goods to some degree and a big contract to have on the books for the future for another 3 years after this season to be damaged goods too at the same time.
So in your mind, 50 games or so into the season, you've kind of made up your mind. This lineup is not where it needs to be and potentially could be awful the rest of the season.
It is what it is. I think it's catastrophic what could really happen to this lineup going forward, where we could see this limited production going on consistently game to game going forward. That's my concern for the Tigres going forward this year in 2015.
Wow. So do you have significant blame towards Brad Ausmus for not motivating these guys, or do you think that it's maybe more higher up in terms of Dave Dombrowski not putting together a lineup that can be successful?
I love Dave D. I'll tell you this much. I love him. I love myself some Double D. But the thing is, right now, the farm system is depleted. That's why Hernan Perez is playing so often when he can't even hit. It's a light-hitting second baseman, shortstop, third baseman. Can't hit really to save his life. Should be in the farm system. But who's better that we can call up right now besides for maybe Dixon Machado, who they've already tried a little bit. He had his cup of coffee, right, in the big leagues already. Didn't show that much. It was only one game or something and limited at bats. But can you trust anybody else in that farm system right now to call up to take the place of Hernan Perez on a, every so often, basis to start? I don't know if you have that in the farm system in AAA, in AA, or anywhere in that Tigers farm system right now. And that's on the Tigers front office, on Dave D, and the scouting staff. So for me, you blame it there, not on Brad Ausmus, who is he's using the guys that he has to work with, that Dave D gave him to work with. So for me, it's more on Dave D and Avila and that scouting staff for the Tigers overall.
Okay, so you go right to the top and say, hey, Dave D has not put Brad Ausmus in the best position. But at the same time, you are noticing some wrinkles with Brad Ausmus, some issues, some inconsistencies, some inexperience showing through in terms of when he's sending runners, how he's using the bullpen, how he's using the starters, and potentially keeping guys in that are struggling too long. And it's just one of those things when a team is struggling, a lot of these choices that he is making are highlighted and were looked at. And so right now, I agree, maybe our exploration into the effectiveness of Brad Ausmus is a little bit premature in that we're being a little bit overly critical. But when your team starts off 11-2, and the record that we have now, it's a similar situation that happened last season. We started off great, and then the rest of the season, after that hot start last season, we were basically a 500 team. And it happened again this season.
So you think it's on Ausmus right now then? Are you saying that? Because the bullpen's not good, though. What he has to deploy out of that bullpen, especially in the late innings, is not good enough to really use in any other major league bullpen.
When evaluating Ausmus, he's making moves that are not helping the team. The 7-4 game where Anibal Sanchez gave up the 3-run home run, I think it was versus Houston, was a situation where Brad Ausmus could have taken him out with 2 runners on, brought in the bullpen. You could have won that game. I think there's situations right now
So
where...
when Sanchez was on the mound, that game where he struck out 11 batters, but he was going so well, that was like unnoticeable, unimaginable what happened after that, letting up the bomb, I think. So when you have a starter going that well and your bullpen is so weak and depleted at the back end of games, you have to keep your starters out there longer than maybe you want to. And Sanchez is proven not to have a long leash to go deep into ball games. That's been his biggest weakness overall, along with getting injured too often, right, in the past with the Tigers and with the Marlins. But for me, when he's got that great stuff where he's K-ing batters, making batters miss on a consistent basis, you've got to keep him out there for longer periods of time. And for me, that's why it's not an Ausmus in that case. Anibal, just bad with the home run ball this year. Way too prone to giving up that long ball. And it's showing more and more, even last night, like you said, when he was great through, 6 or so innings, but gave up that one long ball, and it killed the Tigers overall because they can't hit right now. So
now, you're looking at Anibal Sanchez as a whole. But we're looking at that one game versus Houston. He opened the inning and gave up a home run. So right then you go, oh, okay, potentially there could be an issue here. Let's get someone warm in the bullpen. He doesn't do that. And you also have to look at his track record going towards the later innings, the 6th and 7th innings. Anibal Sanchez has declined significantly, and his runs go up later in the game. So now he's at 105 pitches and 2 runners on. I just think a manager...
But the question is, who do you put in, too?
Right? You could put in Gorzolani. You could put in
It's limited,
Jabba.
though, what you can put in.
I'm not saying the options are world beaters, but it's not Sanchez, because what happened was he served up a meatball to a guy that isn't known for hitting a ton of home runs. So I think that in that case, bad mistake. Right now he's sending runners when he's trying to be aggressive with guys that can hit the ball. I mean, I think it was Rajai Davis was trying to steal third base.
Going to third, you don't ever steal third base when you're already on second base. You're already in scoring position. Why steal third, right? Makes no sense for a knowledgeable guy.
Okay, exactly. Why steal third, and then why ahead of Kinsler and Cabrera? Those moves are quite questionable.
That is. I agree with that, because when they're batting, those guys are coming up, Kinsler or Cabby, especially Cabby. You don't steal anything. You don't chance it, right? You stay on second base, you're already in scoring position. Enough.
And then there are situations where, Jabba Chamberlain gave up a bomb to tie the game a few weeks back, and you left him in there. So it seems like the feel of the game is not yet where it needs to be for Brad Ausmus. I think he's a good manager, and I think I wish we would have gotten the Brad Ausmus after having a job first. We're getting the Brad Ausmus who's learning on the job, who is, struggling a little bit to fine-tune certain things. And you would not see this had Brad Ausmus been a manager for 5 years.
But
But
at
right
least a
now,
coach somewhere else, minor league coach. He was never even a third base, first base, or bench coach.
Right.
Nothing like that. Hitting coach never has been. First time managing, first time doing anything in Major League Baseball. And that was a concern for me when the Tigers hired him. And it's not like he was a Tigers legend like an Alan Trammell who you just hired because of the name. He had no name to go along with them. So that was a weird hire out of the box, but they wanted a knowledgeable guy who caught for 18 years in the bigs, but never hit above like 270, besides for maybe in 96 games, I think it was, with the Dodgers in 09 under Joe Torre. Besides for that, what has he really done to really warrant that job last year when you have a Major League squad ready to win right away, and still is ready to win? But I think he has improved. I'll give him that much, because last year I think he was miserable. Handling the bullpen when it was a better bullpen too, with Nathan. Yeah, Nathan's still healthy, who wasn't the greatest, but in the second half he was better. We'll give him that much, for where credit is due. And then also, sorry, you had him. He wasn't using him properly. Was using Jabba still as the eighth inning guy way too often, when Al was the best guy to use in the eighth inning, was not using him often enough. And now we know about Al and how bad he's been, and he can't even be used. And Jabba can't really either, even though he has a 1-something ERA. And that's my concern now for the Tigers. What is he going to use in the eighth inning on a consistent basis? Or who is he, right? To get to Soria, because I love Soria, but who is that guy going to get the ball to him?
yeah, and it can't be Jabba Chamberlain.
No.
Because versus bad teams, versus teams that aren't any good, you can throw them out there. But when you get up against a team, maybe a Kansas City, maybe a team like the Yankees in Boston, who are, having some success on offense, it's going to be a roller coaster. And
It's
that's
scary. At Yankee Stadium, that right field porch, Jabba's going to give up long balls game in, game out, right?
I mean,
It's too easy.
How refreshing, though, to seal up the biggest problem that we had in the bullpen coming into the season. Soria, in this situation, you have a closer that you can count on. He blew one save, and the fans reacted positively because we have confidence in him. He's not getting a lot of guys on base. He's not walking a lot of guys. He just goes in there, handles his business, and gets the save. That's all we've ever wanted in a closer. And it took you that long, and it took a Nathan injury to decide on Soria. And that's why people are looking at it funny going, okay, do you have the guts to put in a player that's better than a starter that you're paying a lot of money to? That's what a manager with brass balls will do. We'll say, listen, unfortunately, Nathan has struggled. He's putting a lot. I mean, it was obvious in the preseason.
It was horrible. 6 ERA. He was sloppy Joe in the spring training session of ball, too, for himself before he got hurt. And then last year, all season long, he was sloppy Joe. And you had the Mexicutioner, an all-star last year with the Rangers in the first half of the season. And the second half, you're not even properly utilizing him. Like, what was the cause of that for Brad Ausmus? For me, that's where he really mismanaged that ball club last year. And in that playoff series, remember, against the Orioles, when they had a chance to win a few games, and they blew a lot of those leads late in ball games because of his mismanaging of his resources in the pen.
Exactly, and that's why people are now looking at him with a critical eye going, okay, what moves are you making? I mean, are you letting these guys run roughshod over the organization? Are you just letting them do whatever they want? Are you putting your foot down? And a lot of people, whether it be correct or not, are looking at what happened when Jim Leyland walked in. You remember early in his tenure, I think it was a getaway game, might have been versus Oakland, might have been versus a different team, but it was a getaway game, it might have been at home. I recall they just played a game where they just were listless. They didn't have any energy. And he came out and said, listen, I'm coming here to change the culture. That is unacceptable. I don't want to come in here and if you don't put in effort. And he ripped the team.
In 06, yeah.
Yeah, he ripped the team. And people remember that as a watershed moment in the organization, in that this guy came in and said, whoa. Some of the bad habits that we're developing have to end, and it ends now. I'm not going to tolerate that. If you come in here and don't put forth 100% effort, you're going to be out of here quick. And it was just an early in the season. But after that, it seemed like the organization shifted from a loser organization to a team that had confidence. And I'm not saying, I want a manager that's just going to start barking all the time. But what is the message that Ausmus is sending in that locker room? Because it just seems like when they're listless, it doesn't regroup rather quickly. Right now, this offensive slump, something needs to take place rather quickly. And you would think maybe the manager could have more input into that, and it just isn't happening.
But you're saying he's too hands off then. He's not right. Bringing that energy enough, right? That bulldog mentality where Jim Leyland was always a bulldog, was always brass, obviously was brash or whatnot, abrasive, would call you out, would tell you what he really thought. Is Ausmus really doing that inside the locker room, inside the clubhouse, right, with the Tigers?
Right.
I don't know if he is.
Right. All I can go by is what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing him, trying to do handshakes with the players, jumping up and down. And
he's too player-friendly, maybe. Because you know what? Jim Leyland was a player's coach, remember? He really was. But the thing is, he wasn't going to be jumping up and down with them. But he's an older guy, too, obviously. I don't think he really could have Jim Leyland at his state, right, in his life when he managed the ball club. Ausmus could catch right now. He's 44 now, I believe he is. He could still catch. He's shown it, too, in side sessions, right? He's done it with Who now? JV. Who else so far? Lobstein. Numerous guys so far this year to get them right onto the right track. And I think he's good for that purpose. He can get into their heads and really understand what they're going through more than a guy like Jim Leland, who's been out of the ballgame for a long time, Doc.
I agree. I think that if Brad Ausmus can pick up the pace in terms of his learning, then I think this team will be much better. And I do believe that his style at 200 games leaves a lot to be desired. And he's one person that you can blame for some of the woes. Yes, it's the offense. Yes, it's some concerns in terms of, the inconsistency with the bullpen in key situations. Now, they have been better. Adam pointed out on our last podcast, the stats in the month of May were pretty decent. It wasn't bad. It wasn't all that bad. But do you have confidence? No. I mean, you always, when the starters don't go 7 innings, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, there's a big concern. There's a big worry. And now the starters, it puts a lot of pressure on a starter to feel like you have to, give up only 1 or 2 runs.
And to go at least 7 or 8 innings, or you're not going to win the ball game. And that's a lot of pressure on a guy like Anibal Sanchez, who's not used to going deep into ball games. Lobstein, who really can't do it. Buck Farmer has shown as well he can't do it. And I don't like Buck Farmer. The Tigers have 6 quality starters, including Lobstein when he gets back and is healthy. And Verlander, I know we want to probably talk about him. He's got to be healthy when he returns from the DL and be the JV of 2013 at least. He can't be the JV of last year, the JV light that he was, the non-Cy Young candidate, or the non-even second or third starter pitcher that he was last year for the Tigers for most of that season. Turned it on a little bit, right? Towards the end in the playoffs, he wasn't horrible. It was good enough. But the thing is, I want a better JV this year. And if they don't get a better JV with Sanchez struggling, they're not going to be a contending ball club this year in the Central, in my opinion, going forward.
I'm very thankful we get a chance to take phone calls. Our phone number is 248-230-4567, and we have a caller on the line right now who wants to talk Tigers. Thanks for calling DetroitSportsPodcast.com. What's going on?
Gotta add my 2 cents here, and gotta sit there. I like everything you guys are saying. Tigers need to strive for greater consistency.
Dean, what's going on, my friend? Thank you.
That's right.
The dean of sports has to chime in. I know it. You've been watching the Tigers' woes. Vito and I are just like banging our heads, wondering what on earth is going on with our Tigers. What say you?
It's a roller coaster ride. Consistency, and I've always said the thing people don't realize is if a team doesn't have health and depth, they're doomed. And I just have questioned the depth of the Tigers since they broke Lakeland. You sit there, and they were counting on near perfect seasons from a lot of key parts and pieces, and then Rondell and JV, and they just can't get healthy. So that depth, they just don't have, I think, fundamental depth that's going to carry them. They've done okay, but okay is 82 or what? 82 and 82? I mean, that's 500. They have to win at least 90 to 92 games in order to really be in the playoff picture. And I'm just wondering if they have the depth over the marathon that is the season to do what they need to do.
Yeah, and Vito and I were just talking a little bit before you called. How is it that this lineup that's struggling is parading out there Hernan Perez game after game consistently for the last week? Max Scherzer has more hits than he does.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm starting to wonder about my pick there on Scherzer, by the way, but he's turned it around. But that idea there of Perna, there's got to be somebody I think more capable, either down in Toledo. I just don't see him as a regular everyday starter. I don't see him as somebody you can really build a nucleus behind.
Yeah, Dean, it's really surprising how the offense as a whole collectively is so out of whack for such a significant period of time. You would think with leaders like Miguel, with Ian Kinsler, with J.D. Martinez, who has who's gotten now more cachet in terms of getting quality hits at times, but they've all gone into slump at the same time. It's baffling.
Well, our only hope is at somewhere in the point that is this marathon season that they can get some greater systemic consistency, that the ability to be able to, again, have things from role players. And the honeymoon is over. The honeymoon is over when it comes to our manager because, again, now, okay, this is really his team, his people. This is his fingerprints all over the club. A transitional year. We've seen it happen with other managers, like Dungy and Gruden. That's my favorite transitional story. But now this is his team. These are his players. They know his system. They have the expectation. So Osmus, this is your time to either shine or step away.
But, Dean, what is Brad's system really? Who is he as his manager? I don't even know what his brand of baseball is. Is he really the smart guy that we thought he would be based on the analytics? He doesn't really even care about that supposedly now and not even measuring those analytics. So, for me, what kind of manager is he really at this point?
I think he's a catcher playing manager. I think you sit there and you watch the way he calls a game, and it just, to me, he comes across that, okay, I'm in this inning and I manage in this situation. But, you look at sometimes great managers, that they're playing for the big inning or that they have lockdown starters and then they let the bullpen take over. I just think Brad manages the game a lot like a catcher would be. Okay, all right, we got 2 out. Oh, this guy's on. What are we going to do now? And I don't think he's micromanaging. He's just kind of looks at it like it from that point of view.
Is it a good or bad thing, though?
Well, I don't think it's going to be long-term effective because teams, a little bit of swagger, a little bit of reputation, most importantly, players, I think, play to an expectation. I think in the case of Brad, you're right. We don't know. If we sat there, I'm sure, everybody in the clubhouse would say the right things and such, but we really just don't know. What is it that we should expect from his team and such? You look at all the different systems he was under. You look at all the different things. You can't sit there and say, okay, they're playing for the big inning, or they're going to, they're just going to, grind you down, deep at bats or whatever. You just don't know. And part of it is obviously he's dealing the cards he was handed, as opposed to a manager who would have been in there and been more central on free agent signings and stuff like that. I mean, the Tigers, for all intents and purposes, reacted. They didn't necessarily, kind of stayed pat to reactive. They really didn't go out and dominantly go out and find people. They traded. They just really didn't get that depth like I came on with the health and the depth.
Yeah, and Dean, how crazy is this? Versus Anaheim, it just seems like whenever the Tigers go out to play Anaheim, the offense just dies. It's like one of those things where they need to do something to change it up. It's unbelievable. California?
Maybe it falls out of the airplane about the Rocky Mountain states. Who knows?
Yeah, on the way to California, Miguel Cabrera has a cranky ankle. Something about the West Coast trip is just it's unbelievable. But let's hope we turn it around, and let's hope the next time we chat, it'll be on a more positive note, that's for sure.
Definitely, guys. Keep up the good work, and always a delight to share the platform, but most importantly, it's always a gas to sit there and listen to you guys talk sports.
Yeah, Vito. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's baffling that a team that has this much potential is struggling this much. And then you go on the West Coast, and everyone's saying, well, the Tigers struggle during the evening games, and they play better in warm, sunny situations. How much more warm and sunny can you get than the nice
The West Coast, right?
The West
LA,
Coast.
baby. It's the best of the best, right, for weather, warm climate weather in baseball. Thing is, though, how about Cabby? Day-night splits? Difference right there? Eye problems? Maybe eye issues? I don't know. Could there be something there? What do you think, Doc?
I don't know. It does, when you look at the stats, indicate that the Tigers are playing better in day games, especially the.
And he is. Cabby is especially.
Yeah.
It's like some eyesight issue maybe going on for him. In night ball games when there's no sunlight, natural light, is that a problem maybe for him? And does he need his eyes checked out?
Look how bad
Right?
we've gotten.
We're talking about Cabby now like that. Even.
They might need to send a psychologist in the room, maybe a doc per se.
He might be the guy, right?
They might need someone just to go in there and give him a pep talk. I think the good thing is, though, even though we're struggling, even though Kansas City and Minnesota are playing a great brand of baseball, we're going to get back after the All-Star break world-class caliber players if they produce. A Victor Martinez, a JV, Bruce Rondon, hopefully he can continue to have positive results in the minors. So this team is going to look different. Potentially the Tigers are just trying to ride out the wave, and you know what? They are above 500. They're trying to ride out this significant slump, and it's much better to have it at the end of May than to have it at the end of October when we need them to be there. I disagree with you a little bit. I do believe collectively, as a unit, this team can produce, and something will happen. Something will change up this vibe. I just think 1 or 2 good games in a row, and this team has the potential to win 6 of 8, to go on a great winning streak. It's just now doing it. Can this team do that? I think they're close. They just need to get back, and like Dean said, their depth is really a little bit off. And when you lose players like a JV and you lose players like a VMart, you're going to struggle. It's not going to be that easy. It's just a little bit more consistency on offense, a little bit better decision-making by Osmus, 10% improvement in those areas. This team could take off.
And then goodbye to Hernan Perez, right?
And then see you later.
Once and for all. Get rid of him, please.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you sent him up and down so many times. Now he's just a guy riding the bench, and he's so off. It's got to be a confidence issue. It's got to be weighing on him. Did you see the game, the Friday's game? He almost ran into Iglesias on a routine pop-up. It's like, man, if he would have harmed Iglesias, the city would have erupted. He almost ran into him and knocked him over. It was one of those weird plays where you go, oh my gosh, could this get any worse for the guy? You potentially injure one of our great players. My goodness.
I agree. They don't need him. They don't want him. I hope they don't want him, and I hope they just cut ties with them or just send him back down, demote him to AAA, keep him there, let him, just love what he's doing down there, okay, and enjoy AAA Toledo. That's about it for him, though, going forward for me, for my liking as a Tigers fan, because he can't do anything.
One of the most anticipated rehab starts in Toledo in a long time. JV's going to go out there in a Mud Hens jersey, and he's going to throw a rehab start, the one that he's tried so much to avoid. He is going to go down to Toledo and give it a whirl. I'm hoping that he will go down there and just pitch 80 to 85 pitches, handle his business, couple strikeouts, and walk away with no injuries. If that happens, then he'll be on the right path to getting back up to the majors.
9 Ks in a simulated start, too, the other day, right? So we know that he has a potential to K batters when he's going right and healthy completely. I hope he's just healthy as well, honestly, at this point, that when he gets back, he is a JV that can be a number 3, number 2. And really, at this point, Doc, I'll say this much. He should be a number 2 because Sanchez has not been that number 2 that we thought he would be this year consistently with that home run ball, the proneness to giving it up way too often this year. So for me, JV has to be that number 2. If he's not, the Tigers are going to struggle. And if he is that number 2, that's the reason the Tigers can hold off the Twinkies and the Royals or catapult them to win this division in 2015 and to hold off both the Tribe and White Sox, who still can make big runs, I believe. Both can. And I picked the White Sox to win the division to start the season with what they added in the offseason. But now looking at the club, it's a big jump to make from 70-something wins to get to 90 to be in contention, like Dean was saying, at least for a wild card spot, if not to win the division. So the White Sox have to make that big leap. Indians have the young rotation and have shown the ability to be in contention in recent memory. White Sox not so much. And the Royals, we know what they've done in their brand of baseball. But for me, their rotation's not good enough to sustain success going forward in the Central. And that's why I believe if the Tigers have JV healthy, completely healthy, and like he once was at least to 2013, if he's like that from 2013, Tigers can hold off all those teams, catapult the Royals too to win this division in 2015, which would be, as you know, Doc, 5 straight division titles.
With the injury to JV, you now are starting to look at, wow, we are starting to pay players well into their mid-30s, and now you have a guy who has a contract that's up. And I want to frame it like this. JV's injury is significant because he's in the first year of making $28 million. Okay, now he's in his mid-30s. Miguel Cabrera is going to be making well over $20 million, well into his mid to late 30s. And then you have David Price, who is now 29 years old. He is the number 1 on our team, but he is going to be due a big contract. Do you think that, hey, this team should start the negotiation process with him, or should they consider? And a lot of people, when I bring it up, look at me funny. They look at me all cross-eyed. I say, if he's not 100% down with staying at a reasonable price, I think you could potentially build this team for the foreseeable future if you think about trading him.
I would say that if you want to really recoup some young talent to build around for the future, to engage into the farm system, to rebuild that, build some depth, that's the way to do it because Price is going to be a hot commodity at the trade deadline and going forward. But I would say the Tigers have to extend him. He is the ace going forward. Loves JV, loves golf, and they're buddy-buddy. So right now, I think Price wants to stay in Motown. I think he likes it here, likes the winning atmosphere. And I think he likes Brad Ausmus. And he knows the team, like I said, is committed to winning. They've established that. David Price is a guy they need to be their ace going forward. Without Scherzer, with the lessened JV, they need him to re-sign here in Motown going forward. And they kind of have to pay him whatever he wants, even though I know they have the albatross of a contract already, with JV, with Cabrera going forward. And especially Verlander, who's not going to be worth it going forward, already at 32. But Price is the ace already, and people realize, I think the team does too, JV is not the ace anymore. It really is David Price. So with that said, they have to extend him no matter what he wants. They have to pay him, in my opinion. Or they have to sign somebody else this offseason on the open market. Because I believe, realistically, or honestly believe that they let go of Scherzer because they knew they had Price going forward on this ball club.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Well, I just saw...
And they don't trade him. They have to extend him, right?
Yeah, no.
It's one or the other, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. You can't... You cannot let David Price walk away and we get nothing for him. We gave up some players for him, and you let go of potentially a pitcher that can be successful for the foreseeable future in Max Scherzer. But if he continues to pitch this way, the price is going to be in the Max Scherzer range.
No pun intended for Price, right? The price will be right, I think, for David Price on the open market if he wants to go that route and see what he has out there. You know, big market teams, the Dodgers, Halos will sign him to big money if he's allowed to go on the open market. The Bo Sox could really use that ace. Look at their staff ERA and Porcello, ERA above 5. He is not the ace, but really has to pitch like it this year. So the Bo Sox will be in the market. Yankees as well, with Sabathia declining. And I think he can opt out or they can get rid of him some way somehow because I want to move on from him as well, obviously. So all those teams as suitors, you know somebody's going to give him big money if the Tigers don't do it now before the season ends. But I still believe they have a shot to re-sign him more than they did Scherzer after the season ended last year.
Yeah, and the point that came to me as well regarding Price and the whole payroll for the team is you got teams like Houston, you got teams like Tampa Bay, whose payroll is 50% less than the Tigers at $175 million. And they're in first place. And people will say, yeah, they've stunk for so long and they've accumulated talent. But what the Tigers have done is they've said, okay, we're going to sell off our prized minor league talent and bring in guys that are more proven. But with that, like you've said, now the minors is looked at as like, whoa, it's very depleted. And Dave Dombrowski's philosophy has kind of not been to bring up too many homegrown guys. And the guys that they've brought up haven't been world beaters.
Well, Drew Smiley has been. They traded him, though, for David Price. I mean, you got Price now here, the guy that you got for Smiley, who's looked really good with the Rays. Now he's undergoing Tommy John surgery. Sad but true for Smiley as a youngster. But with that said, you know what? Like I think you're getting at, they don't have the farm system right to reproduce the talent. There's nothing homegrown. So they have to kind of extend Price. And JV was that guy they thought they could have as the ace for the future as a homegrown talent. Well, he's not going to be that ace now. So Price is your ace on your ball club right now. If you don't extend him, you got to sign somebody else in the offseason who is a hot commodity and a high caliber arm. Because Price, same thing, going to be that as well in the open market this offseason.
A point that has been on my mind has been with the Tigers in terms of the evaluation of the players in the minors kind of is a little bit questionable. A Buck Farmer comes up, had success last year, and he's dominating in the minors. He comes up, you need him for a couple innings, and he gets rocked by the Angels. Nick Castellanos, people to this day are still rating him very high. And I don't know if I'm being overly critical. I don't know if just I've been jaded by the fact that I've seen Trout, I've seen Bryce Harper, I've seen this kid Bryant in Chicago. Why is it that everyone's making excuses for Castellanos and going, well, he's 23, he's 24, he's young, he's going to develop? I'm saying that on some level, back 3 years ago, if you can just recall the level of hype that Castellanos came with, you could have gotten 4 to 5 players. You could have gotten 1 or 2 contributors and maybe 3, a draft pick, and some players for him based on the hype. Am I mistaken? Wasn't he considered like the one of the top 3 prospects? And now that he's played a couple seasons, I don't see the worth. I see a guy that's now being pulled consistently in the 9th inning. He's now being a DH. His batting average is not great.
It's dipping and dipping, but he was never a top 100 prospect. Was never as highly touted as Trout, as Harper, as Chris Bryant of the Cubbies now, who's like, running the world. And Harper is killing the baseball. He's an all-star in the making. Already has been and will be going forward big time because of his bat.
He wasn't considered a top prospect?
He was never a top 100. Was a top 100 prospect, but never a top 3, top 5 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. For the Tigers, he was a top position player prospect, because our farm system, as we've already discussed, right, is depleted so much. So he was, I think, based, just on that premise. So by default, he was a top position player prospect because nothing else was really growing from the farm.
But they could have, had they made a move, they could have gotten some talent for him. He was considered to be a guy that,
would have produced right away more last year than he has. And at this point, I get your point with this. He's 23, 24. Other guys are younger and producing already. He should be producing at a higher level. But I don't think he'll ever be an all-star year in, year out like Harper can be, like Trout has been, and like Chris Bryant will be going forward for the Cubbies. So that's my opinion on that. I don't think he's as highly touted as you thought he was.
Okay.
He wasn't. I know that for a fact, actually.
Then he was considered high ranking in the Tigers organization,
yes,
but league-wide, maybe not so much. Okay, but then do you think at 1 or 2 more seasons he's going to become at least a 275 hitter?
I would hope so. I thought going into this year he could hit 15, 20 home runs and hit around 270. at least hit 265. Now, it's still early, remember, but his average keeps dipping. He's K'ing way too often. No plate discipline. And the power's not there to make up for the fact that he is K'ing so often. And with guys in scoring position, like last night against the Halos, against a very mediocre Hector Santiago. And that's concerning for me as a Tigers fan, watching our guy who was the top position player prospect in the farm system for so long, who they could have dealt, like you said, to get some major league ready talent. And they didn't. They chose to run it out with him, stay with them. And honestly, I didn't think he was so bad last year at times. I thought he showed something at the plate. But this year, he's like regressed. I would say really he has regressed. And that's a bad thing for the Tigers. And now they can't deal him. He has no value besides for the fact that he is young. And now he does have that going for him. And maybe a little bit of upside. But like to say that he will for sure hit 275 and hit 20 home runs next year, I'm not going to bank on that. I'm not going to put any money on that.
It's one of those things where we can look at the Tigers in a very pessimistic way, but I'm trying to find ways to be optimistic. And so the returning players has me optimistic. I don't think Kansas City and Minnesota can continue at this pace. I mean, they're going to slip back a little bit. We're not that far away where a run of ours can, if we make a run, we can't get back into, first place in this division. So it's one of those things I do believe it's going to come down to the last week for all the teams in the AL Central, a good division. But right now, the play of our Tigers leaves a lot to be desired. We spent, a great deal of time critiquing them, and I think it's justified. This team is a team that has 175 million plus payroll, and guys that you would think need to be consistent aren't there. Injuries, questionable coaching, guys aren't producing, and then the young guys that come up are getting shelled. So something needs to change. Hopefully the last two games in the series will change up the flow, and I don't know, because the Tigers have been on Sunday Night Baseball quite a bit, and they haven't been too successful. Teams are going to be like, dang, you guys put the Tigers on quite a bit on Sunday, and they stink.
And then Porcello last year was blown up. Remember that? After being up for the last five to get in as an All-Star, didn't get in then, and he was blown up. Probably that's the reason why he didn't get elected to the All-Star game as that last guy on the team. So he was up for that vote, didn't get in, and the team overall, as you said, on Sunday Night Baseball and on national television has not been very good in winning baseball games on a regular basis. On Fox Saturday, day baseball maybe a little bit better, but on Sunday night, not so good at all. And really quick, I wanted to note on what Dean was saying too, the depth, and it's weak, as you noted too. And then the guys that they were counting on, relying on so much going into this year have been hurt, VMART JV, or just haven't performed like Anibal Sanchez. And that's concerning for the Tigers going forward too. Because I think Sanchez is not the Sanchez. He can't even be the number two now because of the proneness to giving up the long ball and injuries and not going deep enough into games. And that's why JV is a key to success this year for the Tigers. He is so vital because of that. And really the most vital ingredient on the Tigers staff and roster as a whole because of that factor, because of Sanchez struggling, and really the depleted rotation as a whole too, which is still at the same time better or good enough to win because KC is not that great in the rotation, and Minnesota is definitely not strong enough 1 through 5 to really get it done going forward, in my opinion. And that's why I see the Twinkies probably falling out of the race faster than the Royals, who I think, sticking along or staying around for a longer period of time, and really until the end of the season because they can hit the baseball too. And the Twinkies can, but the Royals have some young guns that are really hitting the baseball and the heck out of the baseball right now. And they have that pen as well, which hasn't been as clearly dominant, but still is good enough to get it done every game, really, in the 8th and 9th inning.
At True to Form, this has been the Motor City Rant regarding the Detroit Tigers. Let's just hope they turn it around. Stay with us. After a quick break, we're going to come back and talk about a little bit about some athletes ranting on Twitter, whether that's a good or bad thing. Vito is going to share a story regarding meeting an individual who many people are calling a savior of a college football team. Stay with us. Motor City Sports Rant, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. All right. Thank you guys for downloading this podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you to those who have been finding it on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, the DetroitSportsNation.com website. There should be no reason why you don't find this podcast. It's very easy to access, easy to download. If you like what you're listening to, share it with a friend. All of us here enjoy doing these podcasts, spending time breaking down Detroit sports, and we can't do it without your support. We greatly appreciate it. If you like what you're listening to, share it with your friends. And I also want to give a special thanks to those who have been supporting us, our friends at the Detroit Sports Nation, DetroitSportsNation.com, the premier website to check out Detroit sports content. They are providing content almost 24/7. You can find our podcast there. They have great writers who come on our podcast. We can't thank them enough for our collaboration. We want to thank the writers and the crew at the Detroit Sports Nation. And we definitely want to thank our sponsors who help keep this podcast on the air, the Detroit Beard Collective, Sport Display Jersey Mount. The crew there is unbelievable. We thank our sponsors. They help keep us on the internet, and they help keep the studio here in Sterling Heights rocking and rolling. So thank you very much. And also, to support us free, check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. And now back to the Motor City Sports Rant. Vito, you're lucky I let you into the studio after a picture I seen on your Twitter page at Vito Jerome. So I'm, well, as you probably know, I'm very active on Twitter. So I'm scrolling along, looking for nice articles, looking for some news. And all of a sudden I see, wait a minute, is that Jim Harbaugh? Is that Vito? Vito and Jim Harbaugh, how on earth did you meet the savior of the Michigan football program? And not only that, snap a picture with him.
Through Top Cat Sales in Royal Oak, downtown Royal Oak. I'm working there as a social media moderator and content production manager. And right now, we had this clinic the other night, Wednesday night, at the Horatio Williams Foundation headquarters called the U of M Football Coaches Clinic. And Jim Harbaugh, the savior of U of M football, right? He was there himself, all jovial, laughing, excitable. And he was the happiest I've seen him ever, I think, in his coaching career. With San Fran in the past, with Stanford, it seemed like he was enjoying life and loving it like none other. So he looks good. Team, maybe not going to be so good this upcoming season, but a very nice guy to meet, very cordial with me. He gave me a few minutes of his time. I got a question in there in a 5-minute media session that he gave to us at the U of M football clinic on Wednesday night. And this all happened because of John Wangler and his association with Jim, getting him to go to Michigan to play quarterback at U of M under Bo Schembechler. And he's very much Bo Schembechler himself. And he gave a lot of credit, a lot of due credit and respect to MSU and the football program that MSU has built under D'Antonio, saying that they're the established team right now. They are really the big brother in Michigan for Michigan football. So no offense to you or anybody else as a U of M football fan, but MSU is legit and the supreme power for football in the state of Michigan right now at the D1 level. That's the truth. And Jim Harbaugh spoke the truth on Wednesday night and gave a lot of good quotes as well. I tweeted about on the Top Cat Sales Twitter account.
Okay, so you are about to meet him. Do you get that aura like, oh, you know, like everyone says regarding Jim Harbaugh? Does he give off that aura of like supreme savior of the Michigan program? Were you like in awe personally meeting this guy that people have really built up?
He seems like a brilliant, nice, loving man. I'll say that, but down to earth. For me, I wasn't like too like nervous or like shell shocked by it or like taken back by it because he seemed like a normal, happy-go-lucky guy, loving guy, was very personable, and he was making his rounds. So, and I'm not the hugest Michigan football fan, so I know I'm making a lot of people jealous here by just getting the chance to meet with them and talk to them. And he said maybe I could even go talk in Ann Arbor with them, by the way, for a sit-down one-on-one chat. So think about that. I know I'm making you and some others jealous, but I didn't get that awe or that vibe, I guess, because he's just a normal, down-to-earth individual. But he is brilliant. I'll give him that much at the same time. Very smart, kind, loving guy. So a regular man who also has that brilliance, you can tell with them. But I didn't get, totally awed by the fact that I was in his presence either.
Okay, so you're actually now in a great position. You're a mature journalist, and you don't break the what do they call it, the hidden wall or whatever, the third wall. Whereas I would be like, oh my God, it's Jim Harbaugh! My goodness, oh my gosh! And I'd freak out and be like, or I'd be staring at him. He'd be looking at me like, what's this dude staring at me for?
Because you're more of a fan at heart too.
Yes.
So
it's really interesting that you met him. What question did you pose to Jim Harbaugh?
It was about the MSU football program, just seeing what he thought about the team, why it has been the number one program in the state of Michigan. So I can tell you love Sparty. Sparty on, right? All about green and white.
Vito, that's a great question. You're like, Mr. Harbaugh, it's great to meet you. Nice to meet you, sir. Tell me why Michigan State is just dominating in football. And he's probably like, well, he gave you the PC answer, right? Well, they've done a great job. All credit to D'Antonio.
Respect to D'Antonio, all that good stuff. Yeah, giving due credit where credit is due. But MSU really deserves it. I'll give that much to your program and to D'Antonio. And I think Harbaugh, he does realize that. He's a smart enough guy, like I said, brilliant in one or two aspects, but that's easy enough to know for any of us, right? We don't have to be a rocket scientist, right, to know that about MSU football right now. But it was very basic. Yeah, to answer your question, too, a very basic PC answer, it was very general. And he did his job, though. He gave me his time a little bit, and I appreciated that. And I talked to him a little bit after that as well because of John Wangler, who is my boss at Top Cat Sales, which is a sports apparel distribution company focusing on Adidas gear, team gear, too, to a lot of high schools throughout the state of Michigan.
Nice. Very good, Vito. Very good. So you got a chance to meet him, and there's a chance potentially you could sit down with the
one and only, the legend. Already, right?
You got his number by chance?
I don't. Did not get his digits. I wanted to get them, but I wasn't that good.
Okay. So next time, when you get a chance maybe to be in his room, you got to get his phone number.
And I'll pass it along to everybody, to all my friends and buddies here at Detroit Sports Podcast, obviously.
You better think twice, 3 times, maybe 4 times about giving it to me. Because after a great game,
You might let him hear about it?
I have not yet. I've thought about it. I've not yet tweeted him. He joined Twitter. And
he's big on there now.
It's a good segue for us, but I have not yet tweeted him, haha, or you're going to be dominated for the next few years, or Ohio State's going to be your biggest rival, not Michigan State. Wow, you could potentially get Jim Harbaugh's number, and a big Sparty Slappy could be like just calling him up. I'd probably call him up on the podcast and just be like, hello, Mr. Harbaugh, you want to come on our podcast? And he'd be like, no, who the hell is this? That's funny stuff. No, good job. Good for you. I'm glad to hear that you met him and that you asked him a professional question and he was cordial. And he's doing the best that he can do to pump up the Michigan program, because they really did take a step back in all seriousness in the last few seasons. He's just in one offseason and in a few short months. Remember, he only came on in January. Few short months, 5 months, he's come in like a whirlwind on Twitter, marketing the program, camps. He was with Jameis Winston and another high draft pick. He's just all over the place trying to do the best that he can, and it's obvious that he loves Michigan. And he and Jay Harbaugh are big on Twitter. On another note, some athletes have been on Twitter in a not so positive fashion the last few days. And to end the podcast, we're just going to talk a little bit about, athletes on Twitter. Is it a good thing? Is it a great way for them to build their brand and things like that? AP, for some reason, is just really harboring a lot of resentment towards the Vikings, and he's just struggled with the whole ordeal and how they treated him. And then he just, earlier last week, went on a Twitter rant. A good 30 minutes just tweeting off tweet after tweet, just indicating, hey, I'm not happy with the way the NFL contracts are. This is not how it's supposed to be. A contract is a contract. And it was just really kind of off-putting and really made a lot of people question him, like, what are you doing? Why
His
are you...
character, right? It made no sense as the top-paid running back in the NFL, one of the highest-paid athletes in general in all of professional sports, and he's going on this Twitter rant. No reason for it. He's got to build up his character now, and he's not building it up the proper way by doing that, and that's why you have to think before you tweet. Before you press that tweet button, like Herm Edwards has said, right, in the past on ESPN and at NFL camps for rookies. That really is true, right? I mean, look at AP, a veteran, doing this, making this stupid mistake that a rookie would make. And it makes him look really bad and poor as a person off the field, too. And why would he demand more money after what happened last year, missing 15 games of the 16-game regular season, right? What do you think about that, Doc?
Yeah, I just think that athletes are narcissistic people. They really feel like when they speak, lots of people should listen. And Twitter provides fuel to that narcissism. That's really what it is that you have so many followers. And can you imagine looking at your Twitter page and seeing 1.1 million or whatever number of followers that he has? I'd be like, wow. So you would be tempted to use it and say, hey, I have a message. I have my phone. Look at you and I. We can access our phone and put a tweet out in literally 3 seconds. The ease with which you can just throw out your ideas on Twitter is amazing. And when these athletes are bored or when they feel like their voice is not being heard, they go to Twitter. And it's a perfectly great grievance. The NFL and their collective bargaining to not negotiate guaranteed contracts in the most violent sport is crazy. And for them to sign off on it after multiple negotiations in collective bargaining not to get guaranteed contracts is crazy. But
it should be that way, don't you think? Because they get hurt so often. It's a violent sport, physical.
Yeah.
Highest physical sport, right, in all the professional sports. And a lot of these guys, such as AP, might be done after 30 or by the age of 30. A lot of the guys last 3-4 years. I think the regular time period is what? 2 or 3 years spent in the league, and that's it. AP is an exception because he's built like a horse, like a mammoth, a beast, and whatnot. So he can sustain the injuries, get through them, and fight back and be a top-notch running back again, like he was the year before all this crap happened with him off the field. So he can get back to being a high-level running back, but 1 or 2 injuries, maybe more for this guy at his more advanced age now. He might not be able to bounce back as easily from an injury or two. So for me, I like how there's no guaranteed money for these guys who are making tons of money anyways through what? Endorsement deals and all that too, and media appearances.
Yeah, but now you also have to compare it to the other sports. They're the only sport that doesn't have a guaranteed contract. Like Max Scherzer signs $200 million. He could go and outside of any self-inflicted type things or bad choices, he gets, clipped by someone on an accident. He gets all that money.
And at least he got the insurance on his arm, huh? Smart thinking man, too.
Smart thinking. But it's one of those things where I love Twitter for information. I love it for journalists. I love it for breaking news. But for athletes, it's the worst thing possible.
It's a danger zone. It really is.
And I'm surprised with the level of endorsements that you can get. I mean, I'm reading numbers like Ronda Rousey's making $3 to $4 million a year on endorsements. Why would you not just, okay, I make a Twitter page and I'm going to give some secrets regarding Detroit Sports Podcast. I run the Twitter at Detroit Podcast, and that's the one where I just tweet out the sports stuff. I also have a tiny other one that's sports related where I just kind of follow the journalists, and a smaller one, and I don't tweet out as much. You can have multiple Twitter accounts. So the official Adrian Peterson account should not be run by Adrian Peterson.
And you could have your PR person do it, right? Your publicist can do it, who, really has a profession in that, right?
Brand.
Does that.
And I would openly say
for a living and knows what to do with that.
I would openly say it, and I would have a hidden one where I can just, follow people I like and only keep it personal.
Limited, right? Yeah.
If you're going to have more than, let's say, 250,000 followers and you're an athlete, you should not be running your own
Get
Twitter.
the publicist to do it, right? What are you paying him or her to do, right? That's what he or she does, specializes in.
Right, not write their apology when you write stupid tweets and things like that. You need to spend the money wisely and just say, hey, my Twitter's not run by me. It's obviously run by a PR person. And just all it needs to be is I'm going to be here this day. I'm going to have this charitable event. Thank you to the fans. Tough game. Blah, blah, blah. Simple, short, and sweet. That's the best way for athletes to use Twitter to interact with the fans. Get some information out there, but not to, banter your opinions regarding contracts. And because everyone who reads that is just going to start hating on you. Do you ever read comments that people send to these athletes? They are nasty.
Be ugly.
They're
vile. Big time.
They're vile.
Yeah.
And some athletes now are going to the police and saying, hey, take care of this. So the trolls out there are vicious and violent. So
they have nothing better to do. Threats made on people's lives, livelihoods, and families. Come on, man.
Right.
Or woman. I mean, come on.
Right.
Why are you doing this? You have nothing better to do with your free time?
Right.
Come on. Go get a job then or something.
And I would say
extra job.
I would shamelessly promote myself if I was on Twitter and a professional athlete. I'd be in the Adidas clothes. I'd be in the Nike clothes. I'd be in like, hey, listen, I'd be drinking all the gear, or every sports drink out there. I would promote the brands that are paying me money. That's the best way to use it, to self-promote yourself. That's what it is. But if you're going to start giving off your political opinions, if you're going to start spewing off on Roger Goodell or spewing off on your contract situation, you're not going to get support, and that's where you can really ruin yourself. So these Twitter rants have to stop. And it's almost to the point now where we can almost start a segment with the Twitter rant of the week and just start reading these tweets that these athletes
have. Who was the bonehead of the week? It was Adrian Peterson this week.
You got it. Vito, man, you brought the noise, man. You did a good job filling in for Jason Jarvi and Vinny Stubbs. Might have to have you back on again.
I would love to be back on. You let me know when you need me, and I'll be back on here. Easy as that.
You got it. You can follow Vito at Vito Jerome on Twitter. Up-and-coming journalist, great writer. He's going to be producing great pieces at the Free Press, freep.com. And if you want to see his work, go to his Twitter page. Definitely find us at Detroit Podcast. I'll always promote his stuff. He's a great writer, and he showed us love early in the Detroit Sports Podcast project. So you always got a seat here, buddy. Anytime you want, come on in, and you can chat about anything you want, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good one.
All right, for Vito Jerome, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This has been the Motor City Sports Rant on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. See everybody next week.
Okay, nice, idiot. You. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.